Part 34. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 331. Speaking of the strange behavior of York City, it begins at the end of the expedition. The garrison occasionally has expedition missions, such as joint exercises, reconnaissance missions, or helping to protect fleets for companies with cooperative relationships. If the supplies transported are too expensive, or the passengers of the passenger ship are important people, they will generally choose a reputable and powerful garrison. Because of Zeppelin's relationship and the repelling of the deep-sea flagship, the garrison has now taken over one or two well-paid expeditions. It is true that the expedition missions in the middle and late stages of the game have requirements for the level of the flagship and the type of ship. These missions require 3 years of non-operation and 3 years of operation. In addition to the difficult expedition missions, there are also some ordinary missions. The garrison has no mandatory requirements for expeditions. If you want to go, you can go. If you don't want to go, you can't go. Some people are not interested in expeditions, such as Leipzig. In her words, they have vomited on expeditions before. For example, in York City, she prefers expeditions because there are few missions. Expeditions can occasionally meet 2 deep-sea ship girls, which gives her a chance to exercise. I remember that York City went on an expedition a few days ago, but I hadn't gone to Sichuanjiu yet, and she only came back in the past few days. In the game, expeditions can improve one's favorability. In reality, expedition missions can make a ship girl feel recognized. It may improve one's favorability, but it seems a bit illusory. Although York City brought the dinner plate to him, Sugu didn't believe that York City fell in love with him. It couldn't be that easy. Maybe if she had been with York City from the beginning, but she was not a secretary ship, and Sugu didn't take special care of her. York City came with the dinner plate and walked away with the dinner plate. Sugu said, "What do you think York City wants to say? It is a heinous crime to whet everyone's appetite and then walk away." She was hesitant. Maybe something happened outside and she accidentally destroyed other people's houses or injured people. But I remember that she had similar accidents before, and I didn't see her being so coquettish today. Although York City has a big chest and no brains, he has a cheerful personality. Before Lexington could speak, Saratoga said next to him, "Could it be that he fell in love with someone else after going out?" The joke wasn't funny. Saratoga curled her lips and said, "Take so from everywhere, big and small." Sugu picked up the fat meat in his bowl with chopsticks, threw it into Saratoga's bowl, and said, "Can you please eat the meat?" "Shut up." Saratoga quickly picked up the fat and wanted to throw it back into Sugu's bowl. Sugu took the bowl away. Seeing this scene, Lexington said, "You two, don't make trouble." Saratoga failed to fight back, but when her sister was not paying attention, she picked up the fat meat and put it into her mouth, and said silently to Sugu, "It's delicious." "Okay, I'm scared of you, my sister-in-law." Needless to say, it really feels a bit immoral and exciting. Just make some small moves. When Lexington greeted the people and turned around, Sugu and Saratoga immediately became serious. Sugu said, "Which city did York City's last expedition mission go to? How about her? Who else is traveling with us? Through this kind of thing, we can probably find out what York City wants to do." "York City didn't say. I would tell you later." Curious. Sugu was somewhat interested in York City's performance, and Lexington felt that it was still necessary to give York City a chance to speak out. Sugu argued with reason, "We, as admirals, since the ship girl has encountered something, let it go if we don't know, but since we know, we naturally have to enlighten her. You see, York City is usually big-hearted and brainless, but this time it was hesitant and hesitant. Yeah, she usually just slaps the application form on my desk if she wants anything." Lexington opened her mouth to fight back, but that was the truth, and then she said, you are going to help the ship girl when she is in trouble. Certainly. When the ship girl encounters confusion, you want to solve it? Certainly. Whatever the ship girl wants, will she be satisfied? Sure. To fight back, you owe me a ring. Richelieu owes me a ring. Akage, you already gave it? Sugu turned to look at Saratoga. His sister-in-law looked innocent. Sugu said, Lexington, you are unreasonable. Why are you being unreasonable? So, as long as it is not a big problem, the admiral should not interfere casually. Lexington then kicked Sugu under the table and whispered, it will be easy for you tonight. Saratoga saw the scene and said, Sister, speak louder. After lunch not long after, Sugu returned to the office to process some documents. These documents are nothing more than the revenue and expenditure records of the town government. The garrison does not need to consider corruption, and it is said that these things do not matter. But since you want to run a town hall, you still have to manage the entire town hall. Otherwise, when needed, you won't know where the money of the town hall has been spent. It took an hour or two to process the documents, and I went to the warehouse in the afternoon. Sugu took some records of resource expenditure and income during this period and heard Leipzig complaining. When York City goes out this time, it consumes a lot of resources. Sugu said, if it's bigger, just make it bigger. York City has been wandering outside the warehouse for the past 2 days, which makes me worried. She can still steal your resources. Maybe. I think she's weird anyway. Sugu was thoughtful, thinking that if York City didn't come to him, he would have to look for her in time. Psychological guidance is a very important thing for an admiral. As he was thinking about how to talk to York City, the sound of something heavy hitting him suddenly came from the distance. Admiral, can you go over and see what they are doing? This was the voice of Blucher. She was out of breath as she ran. She is now responsible for the security management of the townhouse. There was a classic car that was nearly scrapped in the governor's mansion. So looked over and saw that the classic car had hit the wall of the governor's mansion, and half of the front end of the car was scrapped. Compared to York City, it was obvious that the little guys next to them who were pretending to be innocent needed more guidance. Sugu said coldly, Xiaozai. La fight? Fantasy. What are you doing? Kong Xiang said, I just stepped on the accelerator. La fight was about to sneak away, but Xiaozai looked at Sugu and said, Admiral, I like you. There's no use acting like a baby. Kong Xiang said, you can't catch up with us. Then the Admiral Hipper, gearing up and looking gloomy, came out from behind Sugu. She was an expert at dealing with destroyers. Utopia was causing trouble, so he taught the other party a lesson. Sugu returned to his office to drink tea. He saw Saratoga nestled on the sofa pulling the tail of U-81's little wolf. He saw Lexington checking the tea leaves in the iron can and said, Richelieu will come back by himself. Well, besides Richelieu, there should be many people who will find out about the rumors and come back. Lexington put down the tin can and said, at least you have to live on the coast. At least you have to have some contact with the admiral occasionally. If you live in an inland city, it will be difficult. But as a ship girl, you have to live on the coast. Perhaps, when I lived in Gishan, I had to take a long train to get there from the coast. Many people in Gishan have never even heard of Ship Girl. Richelieu just arrived. I didn't see anyone she was talking to. She was looking everywhere all day. It was a bit like Bismarck, who had just arrived at the garrison and stood by the pier looking at the sea and seagulls all day. Although we were familiar with each other before, now that we haven't seen each other for so long, they are a bit strange. I will talk to them in the evening. Don't be too strange. It's not like being in a garrison. Saratoga said, sisters should enlighten them more. We are all sisters. At night, Saratoga was taking a shower, one hand holding the shoriat and the other against her skin. You must appear in front of your brother-in-law with the most beautiful appearance. No matter what you do, your sister will forgive you. We can't go on like this, we can't go on like this, there is nothing we can do if we lose to my sister. But it would be impossible for Shikong to get there first, and since he couldn't kill that foxy girl, he could only start with himself or his brother-in-law. Saratoga touched her lower abdomen. Physically speaking, her figure was definitely not bad. It must be said that she looks younger than her sister. Since there is no problem with body shape and appearance, why can't the relationship go further? Although I know that my brother-in-law has no objection, and neither does my sister, but what's the point of overthrowing it openly and openly? Something must happen without my sister's knowledge. However, my brother-in-law is unwilling to do anything immoral. Then there should be temptation, it doesn't matter if he is willing or not. After taking a shower, Saratoga walked into the room with slightly damp hair. She stood in front of the mirror and thought about it for a while and took out a shirt that belonged to her sister from the closet. My clothes are too small, but my sister's clothes are just right. She was wearing a shirt, and the hem of the shirt hung down to the root of her thighs, which made her look more seductive. My sister seemed to be in Richelieu's room, and she didn't have much time left for herself. After a long time, Saratoga opened the door. Her room was not far from her brother-in-law's room, and there was no one in the corridor. She was walking in the corridor so sneakily, but when she got closer, she frowned. Because there were voices in his brother-in-law's room, and there was actually someone inside. It was York City. Little bitch. On the other side, Sugu was still thinking about when York City would come over and prepared to enlighten him. At night, I saw York City coming over in her nightgown. She had just taken a shower and her body smelled of soap. We can't really come here for a night attack. How? York City said, Admiral, I lost the carrier-based aircraft. Looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 332. The carrier-based aircraft was lost. How could an aircraft carrier girl lose her own carrier-based aircraft? When York City said this, Sugu had reservations. The importance of carrier-based aircraft to an aircraft carrier is indescribable. What is the difference between an aircraft carrier without carrier-based aircraft and a salted fish? Even aircraft carriers and destroyers without carrier-based aircraft cannot defeat them. Sugu remembered that he had threatened York City before, snatching away all your carrier-based aircraft. York City immediately retorted, if you steal my carrier-based aircraft, I will kill you and then plunge into the deep sea. Although both of them were joking, it can be heard that York City attaches great importance to its carrier-based aircraft, even though it only has some whiteboard carrier-based aircraft. At this time, when York City was wearing pajamas and talking loudly, Sugu didn't even believe a word. Although he doesn't quite understand the principle of how a ship's mother changes carrier-based aircraft, it gives people a very fantasy feeling. It's probably like Lexington taking out the carrier-based aircraft, and then York City taking it away. There is obviously only one, but if York City takes it away, she can take off that kind of carrier-based aircraft, but Lexington can't. After all, ship girls are not like real aircraft carriers. They only need to replenish aluminum. The maximum number of takeoffs is not based on the size of the deck, but on the ability of a ship girl. All in all, it is mysterious and cannot be explained by science. In addition to the fact that the carrier-based aircraft cannot be lost, even if York City really loses the carrier-based aircraft. With her character, she would definitely say the carrier-based aircraft is lost, what can I do, I'm in a dilemma, and I don't want to, instead of being so coy and different from usual. Ordinarily, York City is a blank slate carrier-based aircraft, and the garrison really does not rely on her combat power. If it is lost, it is lost. In fact, it is not a big problem. I lost it myself. Anyway, the garrison does not have any extra carrier-based aircraft now, so just be responsible for it. If you don't have a carrier-based aircraft to play with, just stay calm. But after all, I lost something, so of course I can't just forget about it. Regardless of whether it's true or not, I still have to ask a few questions. Sugu looked at York City and said, "Where did you lose the carrier-based aircraft?" "Fujian City." Sugu remembered Fujian City, which was where the York City expedition ended. It was also a prosperous port city. In the eyes of outsiders, that city has some competition with Sichuanjiu. It is also an international metropolis. It's just that Sugu is not a person who likes to travel, and he has never been there. "Why did you lose it?" "I met the deep-sea ship girls, and then they were all shot down, and then they were lost." "You look hesitant, how can I possibly believe you? You can't even lie." Sugu crossed his legs, tapped his fingers on the table, and said, "You think I don't understand anything? At least find a more reliable reason for lying." Faced with Sugu's contemptuous attitude, York City immediately became fierce and said, "If you lose it, you'll lose it. What can I do? If you were like this from the beginning, I would probably believe it." Sugu thought like this and said, "Okay, then I'll ask Lexington and Akage to come over, and you can just talk to them." York City stared angrily and said, "How dare you?" Sugu was not afraid. York City immediately lowered his head and murmured, "It's really lost." Sugu wanted to continue talking, but when he saw York City looking down in melancholy, he said, "Okay, just throw it away. It's okay. I forgive you." He not only has love for the little girl, but also for everyone. York City stood still, and Sugu said earnestly, "Is it really okay, or do you still have something to do?" After being exposed, York City said, "Well, I think, I want to withdraw some resources from the town hall, and I also want a few hero aircraft." "How many resources do you want?" York City spread its fingers. "Okay, that's just a one-time replenishment of resources. As for the hero machine, you can ask Lexington and the others to borrow it yourself, and don't tell me." "Well, if you don't tell me, they won't lend it to me, you know." Sugu knew this very well. It was true that Lexington was gentle and generous to everyone. But without Sugu's request, he would never give up his carrier-based aircraft to others easily. This is not stingy, each ship girl has her own equipment configuration, and it is easy to mess up if you borrow them from one to another. During an attack, there are requirements for who is responsible for air control and who is responsible for bombing. Borrowing equipment privately will cause confusion when necessary, so the admiral will usually make arrangements. York City clasped his hands and said, "It's just one time, I'll just borrow it once, just for a few days. I just want to borrow the hero machine lightly. If you are not my ship girl, I suspect you just want to take the money and abscond." Sugu said, "How many times have you said this before? I just borrowed the carrier-based aircraft once, and a few days later I said, I just borrowed the carrier-based aircraft once. This is York City. This is really just this once. What are you up to?" "Cannot say." Sugu spread his hands and said, "Then I can't help you. If you don't meet such a small request, are you still my admiral?" Sugu said, "You didn't even tell me the truth about what happened to your carrier-based aircraft. Do you think I am your admiral? You are my ship girl. If you have any difficulties, I will definitely help you. I will definitely support you if anything happens to you. Even if you go out and cause an accident, I will compensate you if you need to pay, and I will apologize if you need to apologize. Apologizes are not enough, even if you kneel down, it doesn't matter, of course, if you go to jail, it's still you. Do it yourself. But even if there is a big accident, as long as it is not intentional, the ship girl headquarters will at most strip you of your status as a ship girl. But even if you do nothing, the guardhouse can support you. It is said that a ship girl is deprived of her identity. In fact, no one can deprive a ship girl of her identity. It is just that a ship girl is not allowed to show off her ship uniform and go on an expedition or expedition. After Sugu finished speaking, York City was moved for a moment, but he lowered his head for a moment and became firm again and said, "Admiral, please." Sugu shook his head. "Otherwise, let's do this." York City raised his hand and hooked a finger on the collar of his pajamas and pulled it down, lower and lower, until he saw the point of exposure. Although he really wanted to continue reading, if he did, things would get serious in the future, so Sugu quickly turned away. "If you promise me, I can do whatever I want, anything." "Wait, whatever I do? It seems like you suffered a big loss. If we think about it, there are a lot of people in the governor's mansion who can heat the beds. How can you be like this? You come here to make demands and ask for benefits without suffering any loss. It's like you are risking your life to feed a tiger." Sugu said, "Don't mess around. Admiral, just say yes or no. I know what's right. I just take away the hero machine for a few days. Anyway, there is nothing going on in the garrison now, and there is no powerful deep-sea ship girl. Even if there is, Bismarck and Bazai, now that Richelieu is here, you are not afraid of any deep-sea ship girl. Really, promise me. Admiral, look at my thighs, they are great. You didn't like to look at them the most before. Look, 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 I'm lifting my skirt. Just agree." York City said that he wanted to unbutton his nightgown. Don't ask why he knew it. Of course he was peeking. Sugu was not losing why. At this time, the door to the room was suddenly pushed open, and Saratoga walked in. She bared her teeth towards York City. "York City, what are you doing?" York City just put his hand on the buttons and unbuttoned one at most. She saw that Saratoga was only wearing a shirt, her hair was slightly wet, and because she hadn't wiped it clean after taking a shower, the white shirt clung to her skin, looking seductive. She looked like that and said to Sugu, "I just said he was a pervert, Admiral." Sugu was truly innocent this time. He said and did nothing. York City said, "I'm leaving first, it's settled, Admiral." Hey, I didn't agree, okay." York City said this, she left with her head held high, walked to the corridor, and raised her head. I thought to myself, I don't want to lie to people. In fact, I didn't lose the carrier-based aircraft, I just gave them away. But do you know how difficult it is to have an aircraft carrier without carrier-based aircraft? She has an admiral, many sisters, and the garrison is very good, but she has nothing. Thinking like this, York City has no regrets at all, it is just a good thing for herself. York City left, and Saratoga looked at Sugu with bulging eyes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 333. Saratoga stared at York City, who was about to leave. It felt like the pudding originally prepared for him. He wanted to eat it but found that someone was ready to take action first. York City walked out of the room, and Saratoga followed him out. She didn't turn back until she saw York City return to the room. Then she returned to the room, stretched out her hand, and suddenly the door slammed shut. Saratoga crossed her arms and said, "Hey, my brother-in-law can do it now. He has learned the unspoken rules." Sugu looked at his sister-in-law with a look of contempt and said, "Don't insult someone's innocence out of thin air. I saw York City ready to take off their clothes. Why did you see her taking off her clothes from behind? You can see it from the movements of her hands, like this." Sugu watched Saratoga trying to unbutton his shirt. He could see that Saratoga was not wearing underwear, so he quickly stopped his sister-in-law. Okay, okay, I believe it, I believe it. Sugu surrendered, and Saratoga stopped and said, "That's right, I saw her almost taking off her clothes, with her shoulders exposed." "The shoulders are not exposed, okay. I see you are still turning away your face. It turns out you are peeking." Saratoga shrugged her shoulders and smiled. Sugu knew that his sister-in-law was not that simple. At this time, she could even think of traps to make excuses. Sugu returned to the bed from the table, unable to stand Saratoga's proud look. Saratoga saw her brother-in-law walking away, and she followed him. "What deal did you make with York City?" Sugu raised his head to avoid Saratoga's increasingly approaching face. He had to say that the girl's appearance in just her shirt was too tempting. "I thought to myself, it's very close, don't play with fire and burn yourself. Push down, push down, push down, sisters, sisters, sisters," these two words are constantly echoing in my mind. But no, it's not late at night, and Zai or those little girls might come over at any time, especially Lexington. "What are you doing in the room?" If someone knocks on the door outside, Saratoga will probably be very excited, but he can't bear it. "Stop, stop, Gia, you're too close, I'm going to eat you." "Then eat," Saratoga said this. In fact, for her, after passing through York City, she had no more thoughts. She added, "What on earth is going on with York City coming here?" Sugu was equally confused about York City's performance. He said, she said she lost her carrier-based aircraft." "How is that possible?" Saratoga knew the ship girl better. "No one could take away personal equipment without the ship girl's unwillingness. You can choose to sink it, but you can't grab it." Sugu said, "I don't know why she said that." "You don't know either, then what?" "That's it?" "Yeah, that's it." "Why is she taking off her clothes?" "So you are asking about this," Sugu said. "She wanted to borrow the Hero machine for a few days, so she came to me and said she wanted to make a deal." "And you agreed?" "Of course I didn't agree. Am I that kind of person?" "You're a coward anyway," Saratoga said. She threw herself on the bed and hugged Sugu's pillow. She turned around and said, "Why did she want to borrow the Hero aircraft?" "If she wants to practice her ability to control carrier-based aircraft, use all carrier-based aircraft are the same, she wasn't always like this before." "Probably not to practice my carrier-based aircraft control skills." "Then what happened?" "I said I didn't know, but she didn't. For whatever reason, she lost the carrier-based aircraft." "Wouldn't the Admiral say a few words to her?" "Those carrier-based aircraft were not given to her by the garrison. They belong to her. She should have the right to make her own choices. Like Saint Juan, Bismarck, or Richelieu, who joined the garrison with the salary they earned. They can be handed over to the town guard, but Sugu has no right to take them away. Just like a country, it cannot take away a person's wealth just because it is beneficial to the country. This is moral kidnapping." York City brought its own carrier-based aircraft to join the garrison. Sugu would not regard York City or her carrier-based aircraft as her own. She was a thinking being first. At most, he was a little unhappy with York City's behavior. He took the carrier-based aircraft without notifying him wherever he went. "She lied," Saratoga said. "There must be something unspeakable. Although I'm hiding it now, no one is confused. I choose to believe her, and I also believe she will tell her in the future. Just trust her." Saratoga turned around and lay on her back on the bed. She stretched out her hands and pointed her fingers towards the light. Her chest rose and fell due to breathing. She said, "I don't know what York City thinks. She treats herself as an outsider. Okay, just think of yourself as who you are. Anyway, I belong to my brother-in-law, and I will never hide anything from my brother-in-law. Brother-in-law, haha, as for brother-in-law, you are also mine. Saratoga said this, and Sugu looked over and saw her rising and falling chest, even her underwear and flat belly. I thought to myself, my sister-in-law, my unique sister-in-law, do you know how sexy this sentence is? As if noticing Sugu's eyes, Saratoga unexpectedly showed a charming smile and said, brother-in-law, I like you. Sugu sat next to Saratoga. Seeing Sugu's actions, Saratoga herself panicked. At this time, there was a sudden knock on the door, and Saratoga said, brother-in-law, there is someone. In spite of the banging on the door became louder and louder. Admiral, Admiral, that was a dreamy voice. Admiral, you have never told me a story, and I want to hear it. Admiral, open the door. Saratoga bit her lip, her face flushed. Sugu sat up straight from his originally bent body and muttered, after 9 o'clock, the children must be asked to sleep. On the other side, York City was lying on his bed, holding his pillow with both hands, and his legs were shaking. She tilted her head and looked around. She was in a room by herself. The room was so big. The decoration inside the room is very good, although I always listened to my admiral in the past and told me to treat myself differently. But in my own room, there are also many dressing tables, desks, bookcases, etc. The mirror on the dressing table is very big and bright, and I bought myself lipstick and nail polish, even though I didn't need it at all. There are many books on the bookcase. Although he doesn't read much, the admiral said, everyone has them, put some on them and read them if you want. Anyway, the treatment I received was never worse than anyone else. Yeah, I am the ship girl of the garrison, and he is my admiral. I fought for him, and he managed the garrison well, so it was natural. Because of the carrier-based aircraft, I ran to the admiral's room at night and said that my carrier-based aircraft was lost. I really don't have the ability to lie, so I didn't ask anything. He said he had lost the carrier-based aircraft and wanted to borrow the hero aircraft, but he was immediately rejected. He proposed a deal with a spirit of self-sacrifice, but was rejected. Well, actually speaking of it as a sacrifice, there may not be much resistance. Anyway, she is his ship girl, and she will never be able to leave. No matter what she does with him, it will be the same. Think about it, is it right to give away the carrier-based aircraft yourself? The carrier-based aircraft belongs to you, and you can do whatever you want. From this point of view, you are right. But I already belong to the admiral, so my carrier-based aircraft should belong to the admiral. How can I give it to others casually? It seems wrong again. Well, I can't figure out what is right. Why do you think so? How could such a thing be done? During the expedition, I encountered a Hornet in Fujian City. The aircraft carrier Hornet should be considered my sister. However, there are so many ship girls of the same model in the world, and there should be more than one Bumblebee. Ordinarily, he would not casually recognize others as his sisters. Just like when I met the Enterprise before, I didn't go up and say that I wanted to be the other person's sister. It's just that the feeling is very strange, like there is a connection, the two of them should be very close, they should be sisters. There is no reason, no why. Think about it, the ship girl, the admiral, many of them are held together by feelings. The world is so big and there are many similar people, but the ship girl can recognize her admiral at a glance. When an admiral builds a ship girl, many people are watching, but the awakened ship girl will never mistake her admiral for her. That is a feeling. It's like seeing that Bumblebee yourself, it's a feeling. In fact, besides feelings, there are other relationships. Yes, I remember hearing my sister Lexington say before that she should have a sister, and the garrison should have a sister of her own, the Hornet. Anyway, when I saw this hornet, I thought it should be my sister. Feeling, not only did I feel it, but the other party seemed to feel it too. The two talked happily and then sent their carrier-based aircraft out. I, Bumblebee, have two major enemies in my life, a big-breasted Baichi, and an admiral who took off my equipment. Your admiral is really bad. If you don't have a carrier-based aircraft, use mine. No, unless you have a better carrier-based aircraft, preferably a fighter jet, I want to kill that Baichi. Take it? Well, I should be able to borrow it for you. It's a hero machine, but I can only borrow it because it's not mine. It doesn't matter, I'll just use it for a while and return it to you when the time comes. I just need to get my equipment back. Speaking of so much, where is your admiral? Gone, can't be found anymore. Then why don't you come to our garrison? Let me tell you, I am the admiral. Although a carrier-based aircraft was sent, it might be possible to pull a Hornet back to the garrison. The garrison gets a USS Hornet aircraft carrier, and I get a sister, a win-win situation. Stop it, stop it. Don't talk about your admiral, don't say that I borrowed it, I didn't agree to join your garrison, otherwise the sisters will have nothing to do. I only recognize you, not your admiral. Yeah, I will never tell you. Ah, Northampton, are we going back? Sorry, Sister York City, I have to leave first. We will only stay here for half a month, if. Rest assured. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 334. York City tossed and turned on her bed, thinking about meeting her sister. On the other hand, she felt a little apologetic about hiding something from her admiral. But when it comes to deception, York City actually doesn't have much guilt. Just like the destroyer broke the bowl purely because of naughtiness, he later denied it, saying that he didn't know why he broke it. Generally speaking, as long as it is not malicious deception, it is not a problem. It's okay to be deceptive without being deceitful, be malicious without being malicious, and have a clear conscience. The main reason for this was that there was no other way. If I gave it away, I would definitely be suspected, so I simply said it was lost. It was difficult to come up with a good idea. Although I believe that the admiral will not harass others persistently, he has already agreed to it. Thinking about the problem in his mind, York City rolled twice on the bed, feeling that his head was going to explode. Then she picked a flower from the flower pot by the windowsill and pulled off the petals one by one with her slender fingers. He said right, wrong, and then changed to Sister, Bumblebee, Sister, Bumblebee. All the petals were picked off, her lips curled up, and the flower branch was placed on her lips. He tapped his fingers on his head, feeling like a clown. Regardless of right or wrong, she did it anyway, and she decided to think about what to do next. What I have to do now, find a way to lend out the hero machine. But although his admiral doesn't mind lending out the hero machine, he will be rejected if he doesn't explain the reason. What should he do? Besides, the admiral is no longer easy to solve. Sister Lexington looks easy to handle, but in fact she is the most difficult to deal with, but the best air superiority hero fighter is in her body. Although the carrier-based aircraft on Sister Akagi is also very powerful, the Sea Fang is pretty good. But according to Bumblebee, her enemy is the big devil with terrifying carrier-based aircraft. Saratoga, well, she just messed up her good things, and besides, she didn't usually smile much except when facing the Admiral and Lexington. By the way, there is also the issue of hero machine safety to consider. Well, you don't need to worry about that. Since she is a ship girl, she will definitely not lie to others, at least she will not be able to do such a nasty thing as lying to carrier-based aircraft. The most important thing is to believe that feeling, that is my sister's feeling, and my sister will not lie. At this time, York City was lying on the bed, looking at the ceiling, her eyes dull. If you still want to kill and fight, it is better to be simple and crude. Thinking about problems is really not your strong point. However, she was only depressed for a few seconds, and then cheered herself up. As long as her thoughts did not slip, there were always more solutions than difficulties. York City was thinking about the problem. On the other side, Saratoga sat next to Sugu like a duck. I'll hide under the bed and wait for them to leave. It's useless. They come together as a group as soon as they come. It's no use wherever you hide. Besides, your sister will come over at night. Sugu opened the door, and suddenly Kong Xiang rushed in. Looking back, there was a large group of people including Xiaozai, Lafite, and Firefly. Sugu held down Kong Xiang's head and Kong Xiang said, "Admiral, tell me a story." "To tell the story, I still want to hand you over to Helena for training. As for telling stories, you disturbed my good things. Don't want to hear good stories. I'll tell you ghost stories." A group of little girls ran into the room. Sugu turned around and saw that his bed was immediately occupied, and then saw Saratoga grimacing. It was obvious that the little girl would not leave for a while, so Saratoga could only turn around and leave in 3 steps. Soon after, when the little girl left, Sugu suddenly discovered that Lexington, who had promised to come over, actually did not come over. I had no choice but to complain that Lexington was not trustworthy and there were so many wedding ships. At night, I was left alone in an empty room, that is, I was alone. It wasn't until the next day that Sugu got up and wanted to find Saratoga. He saw York City appearing in front of his door early in the morning. York City stood at the door with a smile on his face and said, "Admiral, promise me, I will just borrow the hero machine for a few days." Sugu said expressionlessly, "What do you want to use it for first?" York City lowered his head and rubbed the ground with his toes, and said, "I'll just take a few days and I'll tell you when I get back." "It's the same thing now, why do you have to wait until you get back? You want to take the hero machine out to show off and play with it?" "I'm not someone who likes to show off. The carrier-based aircraft is used to gamble with others. After losing the exercise with others, the carrier-based aircraft is lost, and then you want to find a place." "I don't gamble." "So what exactly are you doing?" "I can't say, anyway, I will definitely not do anything harmful to the town government." "If you don't say anything, then there's no way." With that said, Sugu walked towards the cafeteria, and then saw York City following him. He went to order food, and she followed suit. Wherever he sat, she also sat. Well, because of Saratoga, she had to move her butt to the side. When he went to the office and she followed him in and out, Lexington asked, waving his hand and saying it was okay. But then he ran to the door and stood guard, obviously afraid that Lexington would ask. Anyway, Sugu saw that if he didn't agree to the request, York City would always be by his side, but he was not afraid and decided not to compromise. "I met a submarine by the playground of the town hall, had a long conversation, and then turned around. York City was still by my side. I found that compared to U-505 and U-47, Admiral, you prefer to hug U-81. Is it because of the breasts?" Sugu said, "One-sided." Meeting Lafite on the roadside, Sugu rubbed Lafite's face, and York City said again, "Lafite and Fantasy are no longer children, they are girls now. The Admiral can't hug them casually anymore, even if they are destroyer, I heard from San Juan before." She said you had seen Fletcher's naked body. "No, you have to be responsible. But if you marry a destroyer, you have to do hard labor. By the way, Admiral, you are a Lilicon. San Juan is not saying that she will never tell anything about Fletcher." "Ah, I remembered, San Juan told me not to tell anyone, only to tell me. I forgot." Encountering a counterattack on the roadside, York City said again, "Admiral, you must have an affair with the counterattack." Nonsense. I have seen you whispering to counterattack many times. Are you going to give counterattack the next ring? Talk nonsense with empty teeth. I always stand on the roof and fly carrier-based aircraft. The carrier-based aircraft are my eyes. I see it. Helpless, Sugu walked to the bathroom. When he entered the door, he said, "Just follow me all the time. You also guard the door when I go to the bathroom. Isn't that too much? Do you want to come in?" York City shouted, "Rogue, pervert, pervert." Coming out of the bathroom, still seeing York City, Sugu said, "If you continue to be so annoying, I will call the Prince of Wales." The Prince of Wales, wearing a pair of eye patches, is full of majesty in the garrison, and he speaks and acts without mercy. I saw it. I saw you having a drink with the Prince of Wales, but it didn't feel romantic at all. Sugu was silent and then said, "My name is Bismarck." Bismarck was standing on top of the lighthouse. I saw you resting your chin on her shoulder. I couldn't tell. It was so sentimental. I'm looking for Helena. Helena can't beat me. Speaking of which, every time you meet Helena, your eyes are always fixed on her chest. York City looked at Sugu and said, "Speaking of which, Bismarck, Helena, and the Prince of Wales are obviously your wedding ships. You dare to have a small house and fantasy, and you also like to kiss Sigsby's face, but you rarely look at it. Until you hug Bismarck, Helena, or the Prince of Wales. Admiral, are you a coward? I have seen you several times wanting to reach out but not daring to reach out. Don't you like it? You never take the initiative to get close to Bazi, but I saw Bazi. When the house approached you, she took the initiative, and you agreed immediately. You like it, maybe, but you obviously like it but you don't dare to do it. Admiral, are you being slutty? You keep saying no, but actually think about it in your heart." Sugu looked at York City. He couldn't hit him anymore, and scolding him was useless. "What exactly do you want to do?" York City raised a hand and said, "The hero machine will last only a few days, definitely not more than a week, and will never be lost. I promise, I swear, otherwise, or let me fall into the deep sea." Sugu waved his hand and said, "You are my ship girl. If you fall into the deep sea, I will lose a lot of money. Okay, you have to be patient, you win. You go to Lexington, I will take care of your business." I told her that I don't care what she wants to ask, she agrees, and I agree. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 335. York City, you are here. Lexington stood in front of the filing cabinet. She was arranging the documents she had processed these days, sorting them by date and category. Sugu is in charge of the decisive work as the admiral, and Lexington is the secretaryship. She has been doing some of the work of organizing and classifying documents. Well, Sister Lexington, and Saratoga. The person accompanying Lexington was Saratoga. She didn't like staying here very much, but her brother-in-law was entangled by York City. She was dating her brother-in-law, and there was a light bulb next to her. It was not interesting at all, so she just came to see him. My sister. However, when I stayed with my sister, I still saw the city of York, which felt a little annoying. Hearing York City's greetings again at this time, Saratoga's eyes widened. Why didn't he have a suffix like sister when it was his turn? York City, you really need a lesson. York City sat down on the sofa in the office. Lexington held the files and stuffed all the files in his arms into the filing cabinet. Wait a minute. York City said quickly, you are busy, you are busy. After quickly finishing his own business, Lexington sat across from York City and reached out to pick up the teapot on the coffee table. No need to pour me tea. Although York City waved his hand, Lexington poured her a cup of tea, and then poured himself a cup of tea. Looking at you like this, what's the matter with coming here this time? York City held the teacup with both hands, blew a breath, watched the tea leaves spinning in the cup, and said, "Well, how should I put it? I want." York City hesitated. Lexington said, "I heard the Admiral told you about you, do you want to use the hero opportunity?" York City didn't have the momentum to follow Sugu at all, and she didn't dare to tease Lexington and Sugu. She bowed her head honestly, "Well, that's right. Can you tell me why? Borrowing a hero aircraft is not an easy matter. Each hero aircraft is rare in the entire world. Even Zeppelin, who had been an instructor at the academy for many years, didn't even have a hero machine. The hero machine cannot be borrowed casually, it is the property of the garrison. However, York City is a sister who is also a garrison. I will definitely borrow it, but it is not okay to lend it out without asking the reason." York City took a careful sip of the tea. In fact, she couldn't taste the tea. She just felt it was bitter. In comparison, she preferred drinks such as Coke and soda pop. Feeling the bitter taste between her lips and teeth, she said, "Well, the reason is hard to explain. I just want to borrow it for 2 days. Even if you borrow it for 2 days, there must be a reason." "No reason. If there's anything embarrassing, I can't tell it to the Admiral. If I tell my sister it's no problem, I won't tell it." Still not working. York City was stubborn and unwilling to say anything. Lexington blinked and showed a smile. Saratoga, who was sitting on the other side, saw this scene and thought, "Here it comes again, the stunt that made her sister famous." Saratoga knew very well that her seemingly gentle sister was no fool. Just as she almost deceived the carrier-based B-25 from the Raider, Lexington could always make people feel ashamed with her words. Lexington said, "The first time I saw you, I felt close to you. I remember that you had just been built by the Admiral and had just returned home. The place we lived in was still a narrow room. At first, there was only one bed in each room. As for the bed, the 3 of us slept in the same bed on the first night. You, me, and Jia. Later we went out to the night market and then bought a wire bed. You slept on that bed, but we or sleep in the same room. I remember that you couldn't even use chopsticks at the beginning. It was inconvenient to use a fork when eating Chinese food. You and the Admiral were like enemies. He laughed at you, you slapped the table in anger, and later spilled the soup. At first, we had neither a town hall nor money, and our life was very difficult, but it was still a very good memory." York City nodded. As a ship girl, she doesn't care too much about conditions and enjoyment. You like fighting. You studied with Zeppelin and Akagi in the academy. You still don't relax after you come back. Sometimes you call me sister, and sometimes you call me senior. Although you are not my biological sister like Gaga, I always treat you as my sister. Although I am the secretary ship and the Admiral's wife, I am still your sister. I thought you had something to say to me, but in the end, am I still too worried?" Lexington's voice was not as exaggerated as the cuckoo's cry of blood, but there was still a lot of grievance and loss. Hearing Lexington's words, York City felt even more guilty. If it hadn't been for her sister Bumblebee, she would have said it immediately. "Sister Lexington, of course I regard you as my sister, but..." Ship girls are emotional beings. Even though York City is careless, her eyes are red and her heart is extremely conflicted. On the other side, Lexington saw York City like this and thought to himself that even though York City was using its trump card, York City was still unwilling to say anything. It seemed that something was indeed very difficult. If she continued to ask, she would really become a big boss who played with people's hearts. She immediately calmed down the grievance on her face. There was an anchor-like ornament on the coffee table next to the sofa. Lexington picked it up. "As you can see, we have so many powerful ship girls in our garrison. To put it bluntly, the garrison doesn't need that many people at all. Look at all those destroyers, they are not of much use at all, Admiral. There is no need for them to do anything. They can just play in the town hall every day. The town hall is not a company or a unit. There is no need to say that there is nothing that is useless. The town hall is a home, and everyone in this family is they are sisters, and the Admiral treats everyone as family. The Admiral has already told me about your matter. The incident about the loss of the carrier-based aircraft is a lie, right? It's just that the Admiral doesn't ask too many questions if you don't want to talk. He feels that everyone needs a little privacy. He has always kept us treated as a unique life. He is very worried about you, and thinks you might meet bad people when you go out. I didn't tell him about such a big thing, and he also felt that he had done something wrong. That's it. You can take the carrier-based aircraft and return it to me when you get back. If you have something to do, handle it well. Anyway, the garrison has your backing. After hearing these words, York City stood up and she said firmly, I will never let down the town government, my sister, or the Admiral. Just wait for my good news. York City took the hero machine and left. Saratoga turned to her sister and said, this is not your company. Are the following words necessary to be so sensational? York City will not leave. What sensationalism? Sergeant, you have favored the Admiral. It's a good thing to have everyone in the garrison love the Admiral. It's a rare opportunity. Brother-in-law no longer needs to gain favor, you know. Yesterday, I saw York City, stupid sister, if you say so, we will have another enemy in the future. Lexington tilted his head cutely and said, anyway, the Admiral must have one day every week that belongs to me. York City finally came out of the office, carrying a lot of hero machines when he came out. It's just that there is no winning smile on her face, it is full of moved expressions. She changed into white clothes and trousers. She originally wore sandals, but now she changed into a pair of knee-high boots. The midday sun coated her body with a layer of gold. I'm leaving, Admiral, the deal is done for you. Lexington's words, the Admiral cared so much for her, moved her so much. Sugu said, I don't need your deal. I'll be back in a few days. Just wait for my good news. There will definitely be good news. Shugu and Saratoga stood on the beach, watching York City go away. Saratoga stood next to Sugu and said, York City is a bit strange. Do you want to follow her? There are no obstacles on the sea, and everyone can track down the enemy. Besides, it is a garrison, so of course we have to give it trust. Since she said she will tell everyone when she comes back, then so be it. But since she put her ship on, if the machine is lost, it will be gone from now on. After sailing a long way from York City, the two of them were walking inside the garrison. Saratoga said, Brother-in-law, let me tell you, my sister did something very stupid. Although Lexington looks gentle, she is actually smart and capable. Does she sometimes do stupid things? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 336. Fujian City is an international metropolis that also developed as a port city. Unlike emerging cities like Shuangzhou City, Fujian City was already a big city before the appearance of Deep Sea Ship Girl. Shuangzhou mainly relies on the security provided by the Naval Academy and plays the role of transferring goods and people. Fujian City mainly relies on the huge market behind it. Every day, many cargo ships dock here, unload their goods, and then the goods are continuously transported into the inland, earning a lot of money. Because countless cargo ships are docked, if the cargo ships want to sail safely on the sea, ship girls as escorts are indispensable. There are many ship girls who come here every day, and most of them come here because of work. It's just that although Fujian City is developed and prosperous, there is no scenery to speak of. Compared with Chuangziu, because it is mainly settled by ordinary humans, the things Kanyang likes are not popular here. Because of political parties, politics, ideology, national hostility, and ethnic conflicts, many things you can do here are easily restricted. So Kanyang likes Chuangziu more than Fujian City. On the street near the dock, someone set up a shed on the side of the street. There were many balloons hung on the wooden wall of the shed. There was a counter several meters away from the wooden wall, and there were many prizes in the cabinet. A blonde woman was holding a pellet gun, leaning on the counter with her butt raised high. This is a game, a shooting game, where the more balloons that are popped in the ammunition, the better the prize. Some people like breasts, some like feet, some like slender figures, some say, only young people like those bones, and only when they are older will they know the benefits of plumpness. However, regardless of the aesthetics, one thing must be admitted. The blonde woman in front of the crotch has a very good figure. Compared with the figure, the thing that people care about the most is the buttocks, which is enough to make people think wildly. Compared with Chuangziu in Fujian City, Chuangziu does not belong to any country, and the ship girls and admirals are the biggest forces there. There are many ship girls in Sichuansha. When I meet those beautiful girls, I always worry about whether they are ship girls. If you want to take action against the ship girl, let alone other aspects, if the admiral finds out, it may not end well. Admiral, he always likes to regard the ship girl as his forbidden love. As for Fujian City, it is mainly populated by ordinary people, and the local police are not as strict as Chuangziu. During this period, there were even gang shopping incidents. In short, no matter how big a city it is, the security here is much worse. The streets near the dock are the most chaotic place, with dragons and snakes mixed together. At this time, a young gangster saw the blonde woman and wanted to touch her buttocks. I thought to myself, if it was discovered, just say it was unintentional. You can't just touch it and kill someone. If you don't find it, you don't have to wash your hands for the whole day. However, the young gangster walked up to the blonde woman. Before he could reach out his hand, someone suddenly reached out and grabbed his wrist. It was a woman with long brown hair. She was the companion of the blonde woman and had already noticed the situation around her. What do you want to do? Did not do anything. I see you want to reach out. The young gangster shouted, let go, who are you? Compared to the blonde woman, the woman in front of him was just as beautiful. He wanted to use the argument to push her and then touch her. However, there was an idea in his mind. The brown-haired woman used her palms to twist his wrist. The force transmitted from the wrist was completely beyond his ability to resist. It hurts, it hurts. The force coming from his wrist was getting stronger and stronger, and the young gangster was almost kneeling on the ground. I'm sorry, I was wrong. The brown-haired woman didn't let go until the other person knelt down and begged for mercy. However, it is just some hooliganism, and it has not succeeded yet, and it cannot be killed. A lesson is enough. There was a lot of noise here, and the blonde woman turned her head. Northampton, what are you doing? The brown-haired woman's name was Northampton. She said, Bumblebee, she wanted to do something to you, and I found out. Bumblebee looked at the man who was kneeling on the ground holding his wrist, subconsciously protecting his buttocks. She had just taken a lot of shots, but none of them hit, not a single balloon was broken, and the consolation prizes were all difficult. She was already very unhappy, and someone actually wanted to do something to her. Compared to her companion Northampton, she was not as easy to talk to as she immediately raised her leg and kicked the man. Bastard, gangster, beast. She had no fear of retaliation, and kicked her many times until the other party fled in embarrassment. This place is really terrible, who are these people? Bumblebee complained. The gangster was driven away, and she continued what she had just unfinished with the gun in her hand. However, after all the bullets in the gun were shot, only a few balloons were broken, and the most prizes were palm-sized dolls. Compared with the money spent, it was obviously a big loss. It's up to you to do, Northampton. Northampton, who has a much gentler personality than Bumblebee, took the gun. Under the smiling expression of the boss, her appearance changed in an instant. Her movements with the gun were obviously much more professional than Bumblebee's. It didn't take a second to aim, her finger pulled the trigger, the gunshot sounded, and the balloon burst. She didn't even look, she turned the gun head in another direction, bang bang bang, every shot was fired without missing a beat. Handsome, Northampton. All hit. Encountering such a magical marksmanship, the smiling boss suddenly showed an aggrieved expression. He was just running a small business, but this time he probably had to spend a lot of money. There was no better result with all the guns. Northampton put the pellet gun in her hand on the counter, lowered her head and looked at the prizes through the glass of the counter. She said, "Bumblebee, what do you want, what doll?" Bumblebee came to play this game for a dolphin doll. However, just now in the game, my poor shooting skills seemed to be ridiculed by the boss, and the ridicule was quite malicious. Bumblebee didn't want any dolphin dolls either. She pointed to the most valuable prize on the counter and said, "We have the highest score, so of course we need the special prize. I want that necklace." Northampton didn't mind the harm her words caused to the boss. She said, "That necklace doesn't look good, do you want it too?" "Yes, it's what we deserve." "Then let's take this one out for us, the special prize one." After all, that boss still did his duty. Even if someone else won the most valuable prize, he didn't try to cheat. Soon after, Bumblebee smiled and walked away holding the necklace. The necklace is made of pure gold. I don't know how pure it is. Anyway, the large gold necklace looks quite vulgar. Of course, it must be a bit expensive. Bumblebee twirled the necklace on her finger, but she didn't like it at all. "Northampton, I'll give you the necklace. You earned it in the first place." "I won't wear it, I don't want it." "You insist on it, so I said just choose the big dolphin doll." "Don't you want it?" That boss actually laughed at my unparalleled marksmanship. I'm going to take away his most expensive prize. She's the one who's heartbroken. Northampton wears a white dress and red stockings. She looks very brave when holding a gun, but she usually looks docile. When she heard Bumblebee complaining, she smiled, showing her little fangs, and then immediately reached out to cover her smiling face and said, "Bumblebee, the big gold necklace actually looks quite matching." There is a vulgar necklace in her hand, but Bumblebee is a girl with noble taste, how could she wear such a necklace? She turned around, held down her companion, and put the necklace on his neck. "Okay, now you take it with you, let's go back." Northampton touched the necklace around his neck and complained, "I have to be your follower in normal times, and I have to escort you in battle. Anyway, I have to work hard. It's not a follower, it's a friend, a best friend, and you haven't escorted me before." It was afternoon, and the two people slowly walked towards the end of the street. It has been many days since I came to the city, and the streets are already familiar to me. Walking all the way from the bustling street, the further you go to the end of the street, the deserted it becomes. It's deserted. The canopy of trees along the street here is dense, covering the entire street, and only a few spots of light fall on the ground. The two of them held hands as if they were lovers. Bumblebee said, "What's the story of the book you borrowed from the bookstore last time?" "Tragedy, not pretty. I borrowed one. It tells the story of a penguin, but next time I want to borrow a comic to read. Comic books are all about fighting and killing. There are also romance comics." Then you have to look for it, but the rent charged by that bookstore is very high. It's quite expensive. Bumblebee moved her skirt, feeling a little delayed, and suddenly said, "Do you think the hot pants look good? But I have the word CV-8 on my thighs, and they can't be wiped off no matter what. There are always a lot of people looking at my thighs strangely. Erase it and you're no longer a hornet." "How come?" Northampton smiled. "As long as it doesn't have straight characters written on it, that's fine." Pornography. While chatting and joking, they walked to the shoulder of the street, where there was a C at the end. A girl with pink hair was sitting on the guardrail by the seaside. She had a ponytail and a ribbon tied on her head. The ribbon was sticking up like rabbit ears. Something flew across the sky. She stretched out her hand, and the shadow stopped firmly in the palm of her hand. As if she was aware of the two people getting closer, she put the carrier-based aircraft on her head like a cute girl, and then turned her head. Seeing this, Bumblebee started flexing her knuckles and Northampton took her arm. The original laughter disappeared, and Bumblebee became furious and said, "That bitch is showing off again. B-25, that's mine, my bomber, and my child. That's not the bomber B-25. Look clearly, that's the bomber A-2. Bumblebee looked dazed and murmured, "A-2, that's okay, no. Even if it's A-2, she still has my B-25, and she hasn't returned it to me yet. My child, my carrier aircraft, my B-25. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl." Author, Hai-De-Rong Yan. Chapter 337. The port occupies a large area of Fujian City and includes many docks. At the pier, which is usually called South Station, it is mainly used for cargo ships to berth. Looking around, there are all kinds of cargo ships, various warehouses, and red and green containers. Another cargo ship arrives at the shore, and porters at the dock rush in. Nowadays, it is not fully mechanized, and manual work is the main force for unloading. Some people get on the ship and others get off the ship. Unloading is the job of workers. For sailors, after a long journey on the sea, everyone wants to take a good rest. They walked into a bar near the pier and tried to forget the boring life at sea. Compared with sailors, ship girls who serve as escorts on passenger ships have to tense up at all times at work. Although they have shifts, they cannot relax for a moment while sailing at sea. Radar detects enemies and sonar detects submarines. If you encounter a deep-sea ship girl and fight hard, you will end up with injuries that don't count, and you will be physically and mentally exhausted at the same time. They are different from those sailors, for whom wanton indulgence is not a thing at all. When you get drunk in a bar, no one knows who is accompanying you all night, male or female. For a ship girl, a life of feasting and reveling is meaningless. If possible, it would be best to return to the Admiral as soon as possible. It's just that some journeys are quite long. A round trip takes nearly 10 days and a half, which can indeed be regarded as an expedition. If you can't return to the town hall as soon as possible, there is a small street near the pier. It is not very prosperous, but there are also a lot of messy things. Walk all the way from the small street to the end, where you will find the seaside. There is a community called Zaizu near the seaside. The community is quiet and seems out of place with the surroundings. Most of the ship girls live there. The small building is full of trees, and the walls are covered with vines. The house is neither high nor short, neither new nor old, and the outside is painted with rice stone. The security guard of Zaizu is an old man who keeps a yellow dog. The salary of a security guard is not high and it is just like an old man's spare time. The salary is not high, and the effect it brings is naturally not high. The old man ignores strangers. Of course, it has something to do with the fact that the stranger has great looks and doesn't look like a bad person. At this time, the three girls walking in the community had a helpless face. That was Northampton. A pleading face, that's a bumblebee. Bumblebee dragged a pink-haired girl. The pink-haired girl was shorter than Bumblebee and had much larger breasts. The expression on her face could be read directly, "I'm in trouble too, and I don't want to. Assault her, give me back my B-25." That was a truly heart-rending cry, an expression of sorrow greater than death. No, the girl who was dragged by the hand and called assaulter replied firmly. "I beg you. The Admiral gave it to me. Without his order, I can't give it to you casually." After moving the Admiral out again, Bumblebee bulged his eyes and said, "You are a bitch and a bastard. You actually scolded me. Well, even if you got a B-25, it would be of no use, your training level is so low. I will also grow." The attacker complained. "I said, as long as you beat me in the exercise, I will return the B-25 to you. This is the first time you have come to me, and it is not a disastrous defeat. It's okay to touch it for me." No. For the attackers, the carrier-based aircraft is theirs as a reward for their heroic battles. It is a reward given to them by the Admiral. No matter how hard Bumblebee said it, he wanted to give it back, but he couldn't. Especially Bumblebee, even if he only touches her once, he will definitely not return it. Is the Raider still a Raider without the B-25? Is that still the strongest dick? Although the nickname is not pleasant, it still means that the Admiral recognizes himself. Bumblebee raised his hand and patted the attacker on the chest, saying, "Big-breasted bitchy, you were bought back by the Admiral by inserting a bid and selling your head. You are so arrogant. If you say that again, I'll get angry. I begged countless times, but I couldn't get my bomber B-25 back." Northampton sat on the sofa, and Bumblebee curled up and rested his legs on Northampton's legs. As a ship girl, there is no shortage of money, and most people have everything they need. Because I am a ship girl, I don't have much tradition at all. I just buy whatever is comfortable and beautiful. There are sofas and rocking chairs all around. Northampton said, "Exercise, how can you beat the Raiders? Her carrier-based aircraft control ability is much higher than yours. It can be said to be the limit. If you use data to quantify it, she has already reached level 100. Level 100 represents the limit. How could Bumblebee not know that?" This was not the first time she challenged the attackers, and she failed miserably every time. However, the bomber B-25 was his own child. How could he give up? Bumblebee said firmly, "Maybe, if there is a hero fighter, we might be able to defeat her." Northampton stroked Bumblebee's bangs and said, "Are you still thinking about that York City thing? Do you believe her that much? You don't understand that feeling." Saying this, Bumblebee recalled the scene of meeting the other person on the street. The scene was very ordinary, walking on the street outside, the weather was hot, and nothing strange happened along the way. It didn't rain suddenly and everyone hid under the eaves together. It's not like someone wants to harass you, and then the other person shows up to save you. Someone was selling candied haws on the street, and an adult and two children were surrounding him. There was a man sitting on the ground. He was knitting something with straw. On the white cloth in front of him were grasshoppers, dragonflies, and butterflies made of various straws. It was a very ordinary encounter, almost missed. It was a wonderful feeling. The two people passed by each other, and then looked back at the same time. "You said Bumblebee and I said York City, and that's how we got to know each other." Bumblebee pursed her lips, and then said, "It's like you and Houston. I don't know if you feel that way. It's a wonderful feeling. Houston, I haven't seen her for a long time. Anyway, this kind of thing can only be understood but not expressed in words. I remember she said she would be here in a few days, but it has been many days now." Bumblebee opened her hand, and a carrier-based aircraft appeared in her hand. It was the carrier-based aircraft given to her by the York City sister she met a few days ago. She said it will be at least 3 days, and at most it will be before we leave we'll come over. You see, the carrier-based aircraft was given to me. I said I didn't want it anymore, but it was still given to me. Although it is a very ordinary carrier-based aircraft, it is also my heart. Who else would give you the carrier-based aircraft if not my sister? Don't fall for the sugar-coated bullet. We already have an admiral. No matter how nice she is to you, there is nothing possible for you to. Just abandon our bastard admiral, and he's gone. Northampton knew that Bumblebee was a tough-talking type, and then she heard Bumblebee say, I told her that I have an admiral and will not join their garrison. And since she is my sister, I will definitely not make it difficult for me. If she insists on doing something, I can just return the carrier-based aircraft to her. Anyway, I believe it will not happen. They were talking when a knock on the door suddenly came. Bumblebee said excitedly, I gave her the address. I calculated that it was almost time. CAO has arrived. Bumblebee got up from the couch, ran out to open the door, and saw Raider standing at the door. I made something for you to try. Don't want. Bumblebee just glanced at it and immediately closed the door. Then after thinking about it, she opened the door again, took the attacker's things, and closed the door again. Eat her food, don't accept her favors, don't even invite her to sit in the house, Northampton smiled and said, it seems that she is not your York City sister. She had some favorable impressions of Bumblebee's sister who suddenly appeared, but not much. Bumblebee hummed, took the thing sent by the Raider, and said, do you want hot chocolate? She'll eat it if she can't. On the other side, York City sailed alone on the sea with the Hero machine. After a lot of time, he finally set foot on the dock of Fujian City again. She had been to the city several times. She took the address she copied down a few days ago and found her destination, which was a candy store. There were a lot of chocolates in the candy store, and it seemed that this was what the store was best at. She saw a clerk with pink hair and an explosive figure there, handing over the address. Hello, may I ask if that's the case? Taking the note, the handwriting on it was familiar. Yes, it is here. I'm looking for Bumblebee. She's upstairs. Oh, Bumblebee lives with her enemy, which is something York City never imagined. Looking for the lost ship girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 338. It's a small candy store. The walls are covered with wallpaper with small black dots, and there are several photo frames filled with graffiti. The decoration of the entire store looks a bit warm and cartoony. There are many counters inside the house, which contain a variety of candies, mostly chocolate. Prices range from low to high, and there are all kinds of prices. York City looked at the whole room and thought, is Bumblebee doing something here? Although I have only been in contact for a short time, I feel that Bumblebee does not fit in here. However, ship girls are naturally casual and do not need to be responsible to anyone. They do not like vanity and comparison. Rather than realizing themselves, they want to gain the approval of the admiral. I heard that Bumblebee's admiral was missing without him, so no matter what he did, it wasn't really surprising. When he heard the clerk say that Bumblebee was upstairs, York City immediately wanted to walk to the side stairs to find his sister. After all, he finally got the consent of the admiral and his sister Lexington. At that time, he got the Hero machine, casually changed his clothes and ran to Yukyang City without stopping for a moment. She wanted to go upstairs, but before she even got close to the stairs, she was immediately stopped. York City asked in confusion, what? Are you a friend of Bumblebee? What do you want from her? The attacker was wearing an apron and holding a blender in his hand, looking at York City, who had short blonde hair. She didn't understand why the other party knew that Bumblebee was here. After all, this store belonged to her, and Bumblebee was just here to stay for a few days as a friend. Another point is, even if you are looking for the Bumblebee, Even if the bumblebee lives upstairs, how can you go upstairs without saying a word? You can walk around freely in the store, but upstairs it is private territory. Bumblebee and I are sisters from the same town, but who are you? It was only at this time that York City remembered that this was not its own garrison. It doesn't matter if you run around as much as you want inside your own townhouse, but it doesn't work outside. She just didn't like to think, that's why she seemed big-breasted and brainless. When someone reminded her, she quickly explained, I am Bumblebee's sister, well, York City, the first York City class ship. Stare. The attacker stared at the York City. She knew that the Hornet was the York City No. 3 ship, but there was no York City in her garrison. How could she have a sister here? They have not been together since they woke up, and the raiders also know very well that the Hornets spend most of their time with Northampton and have no chance to share will and woe with anyone. The Admiral is gone, so he is definitely not a ship girl guarding the mansion. Where is the sister? The attacker looked at York City suspiciously, and then shouted, Bumblebee, someone who calls herself your sister is coming to find you. In less than a second, a voice came, I don't have a sister, wait a minute, I'll go down. Then there was a thumping sound, which was the sound of slippers stepping on the iron-paved stairs. Not long after, a person ran down the stairs. It was Bumblebee with long blonde hair tied into a ponytail. Sister York City, you are finally here. I saw the Bumblebee immediately pounced on York City. It was a feeling of close sisters. Both of them. Bumblebee doesn't have a sister and thinks that's why he's being bullied. Inside the governor's mansion, look at Bizai. He has a soft and homely personality, but having his sister Bismarck is enough. Looking at Sigsby and the other sisters, Fletcher is there. There are many pairs of sisters in the governor's mansion. I don't have a sister and I want one. York City was in the town hall, and she recognized many sisters, including Lexington's sister, Akaga's sister, and even Bizai's sister. She already had enough sisters, but she only wanted one sister. The two people happened to be in the right place at the right time and hit it off immediately. Bumblebee took York City's hand and said, without looking at the raider, let's go upstairs. York City said to the raiders, I said I was the sister of Bumblebee. Bumblebee said, ignore her, that bitchy. There were some vicious words, but there was no malice in Bumblebee's voice, and it didn't actually sound harsh. Bumblebee took York City's hand and headed up the stairs. The attacker looked at Northampton in confusion. Northampton didn't come down. She just stood on the stairs. There is no conflict between Northampton and the raiders. Of course, if I have to say it, there is actually no conflict between the Hornets and the raiders. They are just at odds. If there is a real conflict, how could everyone live in the raiders' shop when they come to Fujiang City? The attacker said, which one is who? Yorktown. They have such a good relationship. How long have they known each other? We only met for a day. It's so strange to be so close after only one day. I'm surprised too. What's she doing here? She is Bumblebee's helper and wants to punish you. As soon as Northampton finished speaking, Bumblebee's voice appeared, Northampton, you traitor. The raider curled his lips and thought, help, that Yorkie looks stupid. Bumblebee pulled York City all the way upstairs and into his room. Did sister come here just now? By the way, what do you want to eat? Bread, biscuits, dried fruit, or fruit? These chocolates are super expensive, and these snacks and candies are also super expensive. York City's treatment was much higher than that of the raiders. Bumblebee dug out a lot of food from the cabinet. York City just picked up a piece of chocolate, and the package had not been torn open. Bumblebee said generously, eat whatever you want, it doesn't cost any money. By the way, there's this. As if he had forgotten something, the Bumblebee was running and jumping in the living room, making a dong 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 sound. Yorktown knew that if footsteps were too loud upstairs, it would get noisy downstairs, and she deliberately wanted to warn Bumblebee. After all, as a sister, she hopes that her sister and everyone will be united and friendly. However, Bumblebee waved his hand, indicating that it was okay. Sister, York City has been away for many days. York City explained, I didn't meet the Admiral when I just went back. You try this milk chocolate, did the hero machine bring it? Bumblebee and York City are not too polite, her character is direct and quite energetic. In fact, when they met that day and told his story, the other party immediately said that he had hero fighter jets in his garrison and could lend them out. If she had a hero fighter, she would definitely be able to step on the raider to the ground, and then take away her own B-25 in the eyes of the raider with grief and anger. She had been dreaming about this day for a long time. Super looking forward to it. York City said, the hero machine was brought over, and I spent a lot of effort to get the Admiral to agree. York City took out the hero machine and Bumblebee took it. She looked at it carefully and felt that it was somewhat familiar, but she couldn't tell what it was. The memories of the past are affected by different people. There are 1,000 Hamlets in 1,000 people's hearts, and every ship girl is unique. Although most of them are somewhat similar, their appearance and temperament are actually different. The ship girls look different, but their ship uniforms and equipment are different. For the same equipment, it is difficult to see the difference. The most difference is scratches. Moreover, the performance of the equipment is the most important, and few people care about the appearance. Unlike the ship girls, because they look different and are both sister ships, the Fuzu is far more popular than the Yamashiro. Bumblebee put the carrier-based aircraft into his ship's suit, felt the powerful performance of the carrier-based aircraft, and felt the unparalleled power. There is one sentence in my heart that I really want to cry out, that is, I am God. Bumblebee looked at the hero machine excitedly, and York City said, I promised the Admiral that I can't borrow it, I can only use it for a few days, so your enemy. My enemy is downstairs. The one with long brown hair is Northampton, that is my good friend. The other one with pink hair and big breasts, she is Raider, she is my enemy. Bumblebee snapped his fingers, raised his foot and stomped towards the ground 3 times, and said, I'm going to kill her, he, ha ha ha. York City looked at Bumblebee, who was piercing his waist and laughing, and thought to himself, your enemy. Do you live with your enemy? York City moved on his seat, and his sister felt a little strange. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai De Rong Yan. Chapter 339. The hero machine was put into the ship suit and then taken out. Bumblebee took a breath and carefully lifted the hero machine up. The hero machine lay in her hand, bathed in the sunlight coming in from the window, as if she was holding something precious, such as a newborn baby. Although regardless of whether it is a hero machine or an ordinary whiteboard machine, even if a carrier-based aircraft is thrown heavily to the ground, it will generally not be damaged at all. It is not such a delicate thing. Bumblebee had a pilgrim-like expression on his face, and seeing this scene, York City smiled with relief. She remembered that when she first touched these carrier-based aircraft, they looked the same. I felt guilty and sad when I hid my situation in the town hall, but now I see Bumblebee as happy as a child, and I feel that everything I do is worth it. If Sugu were here, he could probably feel the scene when he bought a new mobile phone. Even though he knew that the mobile phone would not break easily, he still handled it with care. It's human nature to value your own things. Although these hero machines are not Bumblebees, Bumblebee can't treat other people's things as if they don't matter. Bumblebee grabbed York City's hand and said excitedly, Sister York City, this is a real hero machine. Of course it's a hero machine. Will my sister still lie to you? York City said this, remembering that in the past, he relied on such a heroic machine to easily defeat the Royal Ark, which was more powerful than himself. She didn't know how strong Bumblebee's enemy, the Raider, was, but she worked in a candy store, so I guess he was on everyone's level. He was stronger than her, but not necessarily much. He probably wasn't as powerful as Instructor Zeppelin. After ending the conversation with the attacker downstairs, Northampton walked into the living room on the second floor. She immediately saw Bumblebee with a red face. Bumblebee also saw her, and opened his ship's suit, a huge flight deck, like a show-off. There were many carrier-based aircraft on the flight deck. She said, "Northampton, look, this is the Hero aircraft." Northampton looked gentle, and looked slightly surprised when he saw the Hero machine. If an outsider were to look at it, they would probably think that she was calm. In fact, she is a heavy cruiser, and her training level is higher than that of the Hornet, but not necessarily by much. Moreover, the only people who received attention in the garrison were Wichita and Prince Eugen. Quincy got the opportunity to practice solely because of the Admiral's love. Apton only led the formation to fish for a long time as the flagship, although even when fishing, he was paddling most of the time. Without exercises, we would not be able to see various carrier-based aircraft. It is not that destroyers do not have air defense missions. Northampton, she's a complete carrier aircraft idiot. Friends who clearly don't understand anything and still pretend to be surprised are the most difficult to deal with. Bumblebee put away the flight deck and said, "I won't tell you." Turning his head, Bumblebee looked at York City, who was breaking the chocolate, and asked, "When will sister go back?" "The Admiral granted me many days' leave." "Let me do the math, go shopping and go to the park." "Sister York City, did you know that there is a huge ship anchored in Northport? We can also go shopping there. I heard that there will be an expo in the square these days, and you can go shopping. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, let's just find someone to practice. When I get my B-25 back, we can do whatever we want." York City said, "Aren't you ready?" "There is no need to prepare. There is nothing that cannot be solved with such a carrier-based aircraft. I will declare a challenge right away." Excited, Bumblebee ran downstairs and saw a woman in an Admiral uniform talking to the Raider. Bumblebee saw the scene and didn't bother him. He thought there must be something important. She is not a naughty child, she has clear priorities. "Just thinking, I know you are restless." Bumblebee walked down from the second-floor living room with Northampton and Yorktown following behind. York City asked in a low voice, "Is that your Admiral?" Northampton explained, "We already told you that our Admiral is missing, otherwise we wouldn't be staying here instead of the garrison. The Admiral just came here to hire raiders. Well, you don't really think this is just a candy store? Shop." The attacker, who is not a real candy store clerk, is talking to someone. "The standards are fixed, and it's useless for you to bargain. The price of a deep-sea battleship is the same, and the price of a deep-sea aircraft carrier is the same, and the consumption of all resources is borne by your garrison. Such a strong enemy, if you defeat, you can get a lot of resource rewards. I only need resource supplies, and I don't need the rest of the resources. Everything else is just money. You can save a lot of resources, and maybe you can build something bigger." The female admiral in a white admiral uniform held the price list thoughtfully. If she wanted to hire people, she would certainly have to bear the resources. "Although I heard that the ship girl in front of me eats more aluminum, but if I think about it, I should be able to save a lot of resources. Especially when I heard the last sentence, Dagian. So for the sake of large-scale construction," she gritted her teeth and said, "we have deep-sea battleships over there. I don't want to form a joint formation, but at your price." The female admiral still wanted to negotiate the price, but the attacker quickly shook his head and said, I don't know that much. Anyway, according to the price list, the price of deep sea is so much, and the price of deep sea garbage is also so much. You admirals are based on speed, firepower, and armor. Deep sea ship girls are divided into 3, 6, and 9 levels, and I don't understand that much. Then your price list. Please ask someone to do it. What if it's a golden deep sea battleship? Although it's worse than a deep sea flagship, it's much more powerful than an ordinary battleship, and it's still at this price. Of course not. You have to explain the special circumstances. What if we don't tell you? You know clearly that the situation is special, but you still haven't explained it and deliberately concealed it. I can see it. If you don't know, then there's nothing to say. You'll be at a disadvantage. The female admiral put down the price list, hesitated for a moment, and then said, "That's it, I'll send my ship girl over in a few days. We'll discuss the specific matters at that time, but maybe, something will happen by then. In this situation, I may not be looking for you anymore." "No problem, no problem. I'm leaving." The attacker said, "Don't you want some candy? There must be a lot of destroyers in your garrison. I warmly recommend this milk chocolate to you, and this one, all handmade, the price is reasonable. Then, weigh 5 pounds. The female admiral left with the candy, and Bumblebee approached the attacker and said mockingly, he also said that he wanted to live an ordinary life and eat on his own terms. The attacker hit his head with his small fist, stuck out his tongue, deliberately acted cute, and said, "It's not profitable to open a store. So you are called Baichi and you are duplicitous. Who is eating and drinking for free in my store? You give me back the B-25, and I won't come. Then you should come more often." Bumblebee saw the raider turn around and pick off the apron from the wall, as if wanting to continue working. She said, "Don't wear your open front sweater, it's so sexy. That suit is called Heart Hunter, and it's so hot, and he wears a sweater. You still have your heart, but you don't have a ring, you're a parallel importer." The attacker put on his apron and sleeves and said, "Try saying one more thing, so, Bumblebee, what do you want to do?" "Challenge, I want to challenge you. If you win, you will return my bomber B-25 to me." "Not coming. You simply don't dare to practice with me, you are afraid of losing." "I just don't dare to practice, don't get in my way." Bumblebee stepped aside and said, "You promised me that if you win the exercise, you will return the B-25 to me. You lose again and again, and you lose again and again. It should be said that we have fought against repeated defeats." There were no customers in the store and it seemed a little quiet. Bumblebee thought about it and said, "I'll show you my baby. I will definitely win you this time." Hornet unfolded his ship equipment, and the hero aircraft flashed in front of the attacker and then put it away, saying, "I have a new carrier aircraft." In a flash, the attacker didn't see clearly at all. She said, "I lost, and I want to return the bomber B-25 to you." "What if you lost? What do you want to give me? You just want to win money, and you don't have any bet, you are making a fool of yourself. I will be your maid and your shop assistant. You are not very agile and you still want me to pay for your support. I don't want a shop assistant like you. Besides, who did you borrow your carrier-based aircraft from?" "Rabbit." Bumblebee put his hands on the attacker's shoulders, grabbed the attacker's shoulders, and shook him. "It's not a rabbit. Anyway, tell me, do you want to practice or not?" On the stairs, Northampton said, "Bumblebee has challenged me many times, but she has lost every time. But every once in a while, she will come here to challenge me." "How many times is this here?" "The sixth or the sixth time, 7 times. She said she didn't have a carrier-based aircraft." York City said, "Because of that, he gave the carrier-based aircraft to the other party. In the past, the raiders slipped away alone, and Bumblebee immediately chased after them without bringing anything. During previous challenges, the carrier-based aircraft were borrowed from Rabbit, and now they are returned to others. Come here this time. I was originally here for a trip, but you said you had a hero machine. Rabbit. Who is that? Princeton, light aircraft carrier. York City and Northampton talk in hushed tones as Bumblebee pins Raider on the counter inside the shop. In the end, the attackers were forced to practice, and the location of the practice was chosen to be the sea outside the community. The sea outside is a little far away from the pier. There are no cargo ships, passenger ships, sailboats, or fishing boats around. There is no golden beach nearby, so no one swims here. The attacker was forcefully pulled outside by Bumblebee, who was still wearing an apron and holding a pot in one hand, looking unhappy. There was no image of York City sitting on top of the parapet with their face in their hands. Northampton was wearing a dress, the sun was shining brightly, and she was wearing a wide-brimmed hat. The sea breeze blew by, and her skirt and hair were flying in the wind, like a girl on a trip. Are they always like this? Bumblebee said that Raider is her enemy, but it doesn't look like that at all. Who is the real enemy? Bumblebee also said that the Admiral is her enemy, and she didn't dare to say a word. How did they get into this conflict? York City knew that Bumblebee had two enemies, but the specific story was not told. Northampton actually didn't want to talk to strangers about the past, but it wasn't too important to talk about. The other party brought over the hero machine, which at least meant there was no malicious intent. Of course, the main reason is because I asked. Since I asked, I will briefly explain it. Northampton explained, the Hornet is rare. When it wakes up, it will carry a bomber called the B-25, Doolittle. That carrier-based aircraft is particularly powerful. Of course, it is powerful and consumes aluminum at the same time. There are enough. But just like the battleships eat too much, the general garrison does not dare to let the battleships attack most of the time, but who dares to say that they don't like battleships? Everyone likes the B-25. Inside our garrison, the Raider is best at operating bombers. Of course, while she is good at operating torpedo planes, her weak point is the torpedo plane. After our Admiral fished out the Hornet, we pulled out the Hornet's carrier-based aircraft and gave it to the Raider. Then the Admiral and the Raider, the two of them have become Bumblebee's enemies. Yorktown said, B-25, I haven't seen it. Bumblebees are rare, and B-25s are even rarer. The plot of the story was somewhat familiar, but York City didn't think much about it. Anyway, compared with the other party's admiral, his own admiral is considered a good person. When I told him about sending the carrier-based aircraft out that day, the other party was not angry. Moreover, he usually takes care of everyone. When he goes out to eat, his food is often cheaper than what everyone else eats. The most irritating thing is the lustful part. There are already many wedding couples, and they are still getting married, especially the lustful ones who don't have the courage yet. York City said, Admiral. Her words had just begun when Northampton said, it begins. On the coast, the Bumblebee's feet tap lightly on the sea, causing a little ripple on the sea. Then sailing feet appeared on her feet, and she stepped on the sea and slowly sailed forward. Compared to the previous times when she was always worried during exercises, this time she seemed a little more relaxed and casual. The sailing legs first appeared on the feet, and then other ship equipment appeared, mainly the flight deck appeared on the arms. Raider. Yeah, compared with Bumblebee, the attacker who was forced over was in a bad mood. Get ready to taste the taste of failure. It must be satisfying. It must be the taste of bitter chocolate. The attacker said, I have not failed. You have failed many times before you know what failure feels like. Baring his teeth, Bumblebee said, be worried, be scared. You're the one who needs to worry. It's just a -2 and B-25. And the tall boy bomb. Bumblebee held the flight deck high with one hand, and covered her face with the fingers of the other hand. Her eyes appeared from between the fingers, and she said with a flash of light, "I'm sorry for this exercise, but I want to win." Looking for the Lost Ship Girl. Author, Hai-De-Rong Yan. Chapter 340. Who do you think will win? Northampton put his hands on the guardrail on the coast and looked at York City, whose short hair was flying in the wind. The Hornets and Raiders are off the field, and obviously the drill will start soon, but isn't everything fine? York City glanced at Bumblebee standing on the sea in the distance. That was her sister. She naturally hoped that her sister would win. Putting aside prejudices and simply judging the situation, it is actually a bit difficult for York City to judge it from the perspective of a bystander. In the short time they met, York City had never fought with Bumblebee, so there was really no way to understand Bumblebee's strength. I also heard that Bumblebee was in the garrison before and never had a chance to attack. The carrier-based aircraft were pulled down from the very beginning, and there were not many opportunities for training. She had no idea about the strength of the attackers on the other side and had no clue at all. I heard that there are B-25 and a -2 bombers, which are very powerful carrier-based aircraft, but I have never seen them, so it's hard to comment on them. It's just that when Northampton asked, he had to pretend to understand even if he didn't understand. York City hesitated and said, "The Hornet is an aircraft carrier. Although it lacks specific system training and has very few sorties. But her opponent is the Raider. I remember that the Raider is just a light aircraft carrier. Compared with regular aircraft carriers, light aircraft carriers have no advantage in terms of firepower, armor, or the number of carrier-based aircraft." York City just opened his mouth and suddenly heard Northampton say, "The Raider is not a light aircraft carrier, she is a regular aircraft carrier." The Raider is a regular aircraft carrier. Could it be that I am learning from a fake textbook? York City turned its head and looked at Northampton. Northampton explained, "Once a little girl like Ship Girl grows up, she will also become an adult. Some ship girls can change ship types if they grow up. Although this is rare, Raiders will become regular when they grow up. It's an aircraft carrier, just like Dafeng was originally an aircraft carrier, but after growing up, it became an armored aircraft carrier." "I've never heard that said." Northampton pursed her lips, feeling a little hard to explain, and said, "It's better to have no books than to have a book." York City didn't care. She continued her analysis. Even if the Raider is a regular aircraft carrier, she grew into an aircraft carrier based on a light aircraft carrier. According to history, the Raider's carrier-based aircraft carrying capacity is 65, but she carries tall boy bombs. The number of Hornet carrier-based aircraft carried. York City still couldn't finish. Northampton said, 75, more than the Raiders. York City looked at Northampton and thought, "You still act like you don't understand anything, but you clearly know it so well. Why don't you analyze it? Why do you ask me what to do?" She really wanted to spread her hands and get it over with. They analyze here and there, analyzing the past, saying they are nervous but not nervous about the battle situation. Speaking of nervousness, Northampton is a good friend of the Hornets. He didn't even choose to be with his sister Houston, but stayed with the Hornets. York City is because Bumblebee is her sister, and she doesn't want to see Bumblebee look sad. Anyway, both of them were worried that Bumblebee would lose. If you don't say you're nervous, even though it's your sister and your friends who will end up in this situation, it's not a life and death duel, and no one will be sunk. I think there's still some hope for Bumblebees. But the Raiders are not weak at all. It depends on who can seize the air. There are advantages in releasing carrier-based aircraft first. They analyzed it in detail for a long time, analyzing all possibilities. However, after waiting for a long time, the two people in the field of vision were preparing for the exercise. They did not even release a carrier-based aircraft. Why haven't they launched the carrier-based aircraft yet? Aren't they preparing for exercises? It's like waiting for a movie to start, and the show is about to appear. However, the cast list starts to appear at the beginning of the film, and it lasts for a long time, which makes people feel uncomfortable. Some are tired. Northampton was wondering, and York City frowned and thought for a long time. It was obvious that the Hornet was menacing and seemed to want to kill the attacker immediately. So why is there no movement yet? A bad feeling arose in her heart. Could it be that on the sea, the Hornet and the Raider were already driving? They did not leave too far apart. After all, the battle between aircraft carriers did not involve artillery fire or hand-to-hand combat. Exercises between aircraft carriers mainly test carrier-based aircraft. Whoever has powerful carrier-based aircraft and ensures air superiority will win. The Hornet's ship suit and her flight deck look like a large ship model, which can be barely picked up with one hand. The Raider's ship uniform and her flight deck are like a flag. She releases carrier-based aircraft through the flag-like flight deck. This way of flying seems a bit strange, but like Akaga's bow and arrow, the arrow will turn into a carrier-based aircraft. For example, Kaga is a talisman, and the talisman becomes a carrier-based aircraft. Like the unicorn playing a harp, the notes will turn into carrier aircraft. As for the Raider, she waved the flag, and cloth airplanes cut from ribbons would appear from the flag, then fly and spin in the air, one after another turning into carrier-based aircraft. These are just different forms of expression. Any flying method will not improve the takeoff. The two people on the sea are ready to attack. Bumblebee is the challenger, and usually she takes the lead. Assaulter, you wait to taste defeat. Well, Bumblebee was already furious when he saw the attacker's indifferent expression. Her carrier-based aircraft had already appeared on the flight deck, just waiting for an order. Since you are so ungrateful, I have 75 carrier-based aircraft, 75. So? Nothing. Well, my 75 carrier-based aircraft are going to destroy you. The attacker saw the Hornet pointing the flight deck at him, and was just waiting for the Hornet's carrier-based aircraft to take off from the flight deck, and then she would take action. However, after waiting for a long time, the Hornet's carrier-based aircraft still did not take off. At this time, she heard Bumblebee say, "I'll give you a chance to surrender. Don't force me to take action, otherwise it will make you too embarrassed. Let me tell you, I have a hero machine, and I can control the air in one round. You feel free to attack. The weather is sunny today, so there should be a lot of people watching. Besides, it's close to the dock, so it wouldn't be good for us ship girls to practice here. Only Northampton and York City are watching, and they didn't always practice here before." Bumblebee touched his bangs, then touched his hair all the way to his long ponytail, and said, "I think we still have to wait 2 days. What's going on? If you stop, you lose this time." Bumblebee said, "If you don't know how to cherish the opportunity given to you, then prepare to fail." Although Hornet said so, the carrier-based aircraft did not take off. At noon, I got the hero machine brought by my sister York City, and immediately put it on me. Because it is a hero fighter, the aluminum consumption is a bit high, and the aluminum originally reserved is simply not enough, which means that it is not fully equipped now. All in all, she almost wanted to cry at this point.